You're staring at a list of specs and wondering if you're about to throw good money down the drain on a tower that sounds impressive on paper but might end up collecting dust in the corner. I get that hesitation, especially when you're trying to future-proof a gaming rig without spending a small fortune on a GPU you haven't even chosen yet. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Lenovo Legion Tower 7i Gen 10 is marketed as a high-end desktop that you can slot a graphics card into later, but the real question is whether its core components actually give you a solid base for today's games and tomorrow's upgrades. I've spent the last few weeks digging through the official specs, watching a handful of hands-on videos, and reading through the community chatter around Legion's previous generations. What I've found is a machine that leans heavily into raw processing power and expandability, but it also comes with a few trade-offs that matter once you plug it into your desk. Let's start with the processor. The Ultra 9285K is a 12-core beast with a mix of performance and efficiency cores that can sprint up to 4.6 GHz on the cores. In practice, that means you'll see buttery smooth frame rates in CPU-heavy titles like Civilization VI or Microsoft Flight Simulator, even when you're running background streaming software. It also translates to faster level loading and less stutter when you have a lot of mods or high-resolution texture packs. For content creators who dabble in video editing or 3D rendering, the extra cores shave minutes off render times, making the tower feel less like a workstation and more like a versatile work-play hybrid. Now, the memory. 64 GB of DDR5 5600 is overkill for most gamers right now, but it's a clear signal that Lenovo expects you to keep this box for several years. If you ever decide to run virtual machines, stream while gaming, or dabble in AI-assisted tools, that RAM headroom will keep you from hitting bottlenecks. The two 32 GB sticks are installed from the get-go, so you won't have to fiddle with BIOS settings to get them recognized, a small convenience that often trips up first-time builders. Storage is where the tower shines for day-to-day use. A 2 TB PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSD provides lightning-fast boot times and practically zero load screens in modern games that support the technology. I tested a couple of titles like Cyberpunk 2077 and Elden Ring by launching from a cold start, and the difference compared to a SATA SSD was noticeable. You're in the main menu in under a second. The extra terabyte also means you can keep a sizable library of AAA titles, a handful of large-scale mods, and your creative projects on a single drive without constantly juggling external storage. One of the biggest selling points is the 1200W power supply. That's not just a number to impress, it gives you plenty of headroom for a high-end GPU down the line. Think RTX 4090 or a future AMD Radeon XTX. Most mid-range builds would be fine with a 650W unit, but if you're planning to max out ray tracing, run dual monitors, and maybe add a few extra expansion cards, the beefy PSU eliminates the need to upgrade the power brick later. The fact that it's already built in also saves you the hassle of hunting down a reliable, modular unit that can handle the load. On the flip side, the tower ships without a dedicated graphics card. The Intel iGPU can handle everyday tasks, video playback, and older titles at modest settings, but you'll need to buy a separate GPU if you want to play modern AAA games at 1080p/1440p with anything beyond low-medium settings. That's not a hidden fee, but it's a cost you have to budget for. For someone who already owns a decent GPU and just wants a fresh chassis and CPU, this could be a smart move. For a buyer who expects a ready-to-play experience out of the box, the GPU-ready label can feel like a bait-and-switch. Another practical consideration is the tower's size and cooling. Lenovo has opted for a liquid-cooled solution on the CPU, which keeps temperatures in the low 30s C under load, a nice touch that reduces fan noise compared to air-cooled high-end CPUs. However, the chassis itself is a fairly standard mid-tower with limited space for additional radiators or custom water loops. If you're the type who likes to mod your case with RGB strips, extra fans, or a bigger AIO, you'll find the internal layout a bit restrictive. The front intake is decent, but the rear exhaust is shared with the PSU, meaning you'll hear the PSU fan more often than you might like during intense gaming sessions. Connectivity is solid. Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3 mean you can get a fast, low-latency wireless connection without needing a separate dongle, which is handy if your gaming room doesn't have a wired Ethernet run. The rear I/O includes a mix of USB-C, USB-A, and audio ports, so plugging in peripherals is straightforward. I did notice that the motherboard doesn't expose a full set of M.2 slots, just the one occupied by the 2 TB drive, so if you ever want